In several of our talks, we have clearly demonstrated that Muhammadan Islam is a cult belief system because its followers must devote their lives to copying the documented and anecdotal deeds, utterances and actions, no matter how absurd or inappropriate, of a single human being. Muhammad. When one studies both his Quran and the Hadiths, the alleged stories reported about him by his companions, one soon realizes that amongst his many other dangerous psychological disorders, he was prone to delusions of conspiracies against him throughout most of his adult life. Invariably, the Hadiths tell us he received numerous revelations, each warning him, so he claimed, of various impending attacks, betrayals, wars, ambushes, or other forms of harm, both large and small, that he would personally face. In reality, this was part and parcel of his pathological narcissism. He would spend his time selecting individuals or groups of people to target, most of whom would be trying to keep out of his way at the time. Then, to everyone's surprise, after attacking them, claims, via psychological projection, they had been planning to do to him what he had actually done to them, his victims. To this day, Muhammad's followers, in their obsession to emulate his every delusional foible and dangerous flaw, are still doing and claiming exactly the same. Although he died some 1,400 years ago, we are now at more risk than ever from the consequences of his personality disorders, as there are now hundreds of millions of people in the world determinedly trying to live Muhammad's dream on a daily basis. For example, although all the terrorists who performed the 9/11 atrocities were known for sure to have been fundamentalist Muslim followers of Muhammad from Saudi Arabia and other Arab countries, all gleefully carrying out Muhammad's detailed instructions to kill infidels wherever you can find them, nonetheless, Muslims all around the world subsequently claimed it was the Israeli intelligence service, the Mossad, who had committed these atrocities apparently in an attempt to implicate innocent Saudis and besmirch the good name of Islam in particular. Their reasons for doing so are complex. For a start, they wish to instill in humanity a totally bogus belief that Muslims are all peaceful people who could not possibly commit such heinous crimes against innocent civilians. They also wish to confuse and or lower the guard of their enemies, that is to say every non-Muslim in the world, so as to perpetuate conditions in which they can carry on operating unopposed their agenda at world domination. They are all, of course, to an extent, in a euphoric state of total denial of all facts or reality, and hence continue to fantasize about their total superiority over all other human beings. Another gem of theirs is the allegation that the Indonesian tsunami was activated by an American or yet again Israeli nuclear explosion in the sea nearby. Don't laugh. Millions of Muslims totally accept this as true. The latest that is being made public to the Muslim world is that the Israelis, once more, went to Haiti not to help save lives, as was demonstrated by almost every reputable TV station, but to steal body parts. This is a grotesque new twist on their deadly and never-ending blood libel fantasy that is once more believed by millions of them without once asking the simple question: if this were true, why has not a single news media, except the Arabs, reported such heinous crimes? Logic, as we have assiduously demonstrated, and as you, our listeners, read in their comments, is not part of the thinking processes of the brainwashed minds of the followers of Muhammad. By the way, these egregious allegations are made on prime-time television by so-called scholars of Islam, watched by hundreds of millions of them. Since Muhammad justified each and every single one of his nefarious acts with his made-to-order revelations, allegedly from Allah, via the angel Gabriel, of course, exonerating him of each and every misdeed, his followers also never feel guilty of any wrongdoing. It is always others or Satan whom they blame. Not once in 1400 years of Arab imperialism have any of them expressed any remorse or given any apology to any of their hundreds of millions of victims on at least 3 continents. On the contrary, the Arabs especially boast about their conquests and the enslavement and plunder of millions of people, while at the same time they have the goal to demand apologies from the Western powers for alleged Western imperialism in Arab lands. The level of hypocrisy exhibited by the followers of Muhammad is as obscene as their arrogance and mendacity. It is bizarre that many people in our democracies are still completely fooled by them and are eager to repeat and spread their reversals of the truth and fantasies of conspiracy against them. I shall now recite, in chronological order, some examples of these very same traits passed down from Muhammad to his followers through his Quran and Hadith. He accused his own kith and kin, the Quraysh tribe, of oppressing and persecuting him and his followers, when in fact it was he and his followers who were insulting, attacking, degrading, humiliating, and denying the centuries-old religious beliefs of his own people in retaliation for them not accepting his false pretenses to prophethood and his personal Allah as the one and only God. The pagan Quraysh did not have him killed because, despite Muhammad's negative projection of their characteristics in his Quran, and unlike himself, they were not bloodthirsty and wanton murderers. They considered him a harmless but possessed man. With hindsight, of course, they had been utterly wrong and had made a mistake that was not only fatal for themselves, but his many hundreds of millions of victims, often including his own followers, ever since. He had almost all those who criticized, satirized, opposed, or even just questioned him, be they men or women, young or old, free or slave, butchered by his assassins at his explicit orders. His habitual excuse for doing so was that they were persecuting him, when in fact not one of them was actually a threat to him. Whenever he had a setback, he cheered himself and his followers up by picking on the peaceable Judaized, pagan, or Christian Arabian tribes. Invariably, his excuses for doing so were contained in hastily made-to-order revelations, all alleged to be divine, in which he accused his victims of their intention to betray or kill him. Since the so-called people of the book, Christians and Jews, were largely educated, hard-working, and connected to civilized backgrounds, they were prosperous and wealthy compared to Muhammad in particular and the pagan Arabs in general. He was jealous and envious of them and had his eyes fixed upon depriving them of their wealth, which he desired for himself. As Muhammad was effectively unemployed and most definitely unemployable, he had to resort to the methodology of the criminally minded thug to attain his goals. He could reasonably be considered the leader of the first major organized crime syndicate in history, preceding the mafia by 1400 years. To give vent to his ambitions and lusts, he had to project upon his intended victims his own criminal agenda. He accused the people of the book of being traitors to his cause, disbelievers in his version of Allah and in himself as messenger. He also called them unbelievers, claiming they allegedly associated other entities with Allah, the Christians calling Jesus the Son of God, and the Jews calling Uzair, Ezra the scribe, also the Son of God. With a simple but perverted sleight of tongue and distortion of facts, Muhammad set himself up as the only true believer in a one and only God. He then accused everyone of conspiring against him, even if completely unwittingly, and so fair game for the war he and his followers in his name have waged against all of humanity ever since.